Welcome, dear listener. Hello, dear friend. Welcome to Bible Stories for Sleep. I am truly so glad you are here tonight. Before we begin, I want to gently invite you to get comfortable. Maybe you are nestled under a warm blanket, or maybe your room is dim and quiet, with only the soft glow of a night light. You may be listening after a long day, or maybe you are just beginning to rest your mind. Wherever you are welcome here. If you feel led, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Feel free to write in the comments and let me know. It always warms my heart to see the different places people are listening, whether near or far. And if this story brings you peace or helps you feel just a little more calm, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. Your support truly helps these peaceful stories reach more hearts who may need rest. Now, breathe in gently and let your shoulders relax. Tonight, we are going to step into the story of Hannah and Peninnah, a story of sorrow and prayer, of patience and peace, and of a quiet woman whose tears were not forgotten. Let your mind slow down, let your heart be still, and come with me now to a quiet hillside in the land of ancient Israel. Long ago, nestled among the soft hills of the land of Ephraim, there lived a man named Elkanah. He was from the town of Ramah, and he came from a long and noble line. Elkanah was a Levite, descended through the line of Kohath, one of the sons of Levi, who was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. His ancestry reached back through the generations, rich with the heritage of God's people. Elkanah was a devout man. He was faithful to the Lord and careful to observe the customs of worship that had been passed down through the generations. He lived in a time when the temple of the Lord was not yet in Jerusalem, but instead stood in Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant rested and where the people came to worship. Now, Elkanah had 2 wives. One was named Hannah, and the other was named Peninnah. Peninnah had children. Sons and daughters ran through her home, filling the air with laughter and footsteps, with the joyful noise of youth. Her days were busy with tending to her little ones, with preparing food, and with managing all the duties that came with being a mother. But Hannah had none. Her house was quiet. Her arms were empty. Her heart was heavy. Though Elkanah loved Hannah deeply, perhaps more than he loved Peninnah still, her childlessness remained. Year after year, her womb stayed silent. Her prayers for a child, whispered softly in the night, seemed unanswered. And yet, Elkanah's love for her never wavered. He saw her beauty, her grace, and the sorrow she carried. He cherished her all the more because of it. Every year Elkanah made the journey from his home in Ramah to the sacred city of Shiloh, where he would worship the Lord and offer sacrifices, as was the custom. He did not go alone. He brought his family with him, Peninnah, her children, and Hannah. This annual pilgrimage was not only an act of worship, but also a time of gathering and remembering the faithfulness of God. In Shiloh, the priests served in the house of the Lord. One of them, named Eli, watched over the tabernacle. His sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were also priests, though their hearts did not walk in the same righteousness as their father. When it was time to offer the sacrifice, Elkanah would give a portion of the meat to Peninnah and to each of her children, but to Hannah he gave a double portion. not because she had children to feed, but because his heart favored her. He knew her sorrow. He saw the quiet ache in her eyes. And in giving her more, he hoped to bring comfort. But the love he gave to Hannah only deepened Peninnah's jealousy. The rivalry between the two women grew with each passing year. Peninnah, seeing that Hannah was beloved yet barren, allowed bitterness to fill her heart. And so she provoked Hannah year after year. She would speak cruel words. She would remind her, often and sharply, that she had children while Hannah had none. She would use her position as a mother to wound the heart of a woman who longed for motherhood. It was not just once or twice. It happened every year, especially during the journey to Shiloh when the emotions were already tender and the focus was on prayer and worship. Peninnah's words became even sharper. It was as if she took pleasure in watching Hannah's face fall and her spirit break. One year the pain became too much. Hannah would not eat. She sat in quiet misery, her spirit so crushed that she could not bring herself to enjoy the festival or the feast. Tears welled in her eyes, and her heart felt like a weight pressing down upon her. Elkanah noticed her sorrow and came to her gently. He spoke with tenderness. "Hannah," he said, "why are you weeping? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" His voice was kind, his love was real, but his words could not reach the deep ache inside her. Hannah longed for a child not to replace Elkanah's love, but to fulfill the dream that had lived in her heart for so long. A dream that Peninnah's words only made more painful with each reminder. And yet, Hannah said nothing. She did not argue. She did not complain. She simply rose from her place, quiet and still, and made her way toward the temple of the Lord. It was evening. The day was beginning to dim. The air in Shiloh was soft and cool. And as the stars slowly blinked awake in the sky above, Hannah prepared to pour out her soul before the One who sees all. The temple in Shiloh stood quietly in the evening light. Its sacred walls held centuries of worship, of offerings, and of silent cries carried to heaven. It was not a grand building by the standards of great cities, but it was holy. It was the dwelling place of the Lord's presence on earth. And tonight it would become a sanctuary for one woman's sorrow. Hannah walked slowly toward the entrance. Her steps were soft, almost hesitant. She had cried many times before. She had prayed in her heart for years, but something in her had changed. Maybe it was the long sadness. Maybe it was Peninnah's final cutting remark. Or maybe it was the double portion from Elkanah, a gift meant to comfort that instead reminded her of what she lacked. Whatever it was, her soul had reached its limit. She could no longer keep the grief inside. She entered the temple quietly. The space was dim and peaceful. There was no crowd, no noise, no bustle, only stillness, and the presence of God. She knelt down, her hands gently folded. She bowed her head low. Her lips began to move, though her voice made no sound. Her whole heart poured out into her silent prayer. Every tear she had shed in secret, every longing she had carried for years, every moment of shame, of ridicule, of aching hope, she brought it all before the Lord. She made a vow. "O Lord of hosts," she prayed within herself, If you will truly look upon the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give to your servant a son, then I will give him to you all the days of his life. No razor shall ever touch his head. This vow meant that her son, if born, would be given as a Nazarite. This was a sacred promise. A Nazarite lived in special dedication to God, marked by a different kind of life. It was not an ordinary gift she was offering. It was a complete surrender of the child she had not yet received. And still, she continued praying. Her lips moved silently. Her body trembled with quiet emotion. The temple was calm, but within her the storm was still being stilled. Not far from where she prayed sat Eli, the priest. He was an older man now, experienced, respected, and watchful. He noticed her. He saw her kneeling alone. He observed her lips moving without sound. Her face was intense. Her eyes were closed. Her hands clenched slightly as though she was holding on to something invisible. Eli misunderstood. He did not hear her words. He did not see her pain. He only saw a woman whispering without sound in the temple of the Lord, and he assumed the worst. "How long will you go on being drunk?" he asked her, his voice cutting into the silence. "Put away your wine." Hannah opened her eyes and looked up. She could have been offended. She could have walked away in silence. But instead, she spoke softly, with grace and humility. "No, my lord," she said gently. "I am a woman with a sorrowful spirit. I have not drunk wine or strong drink. I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord." Her voice trembled slightly, but she remained calm. She explained herself not with defensiveness, but with truth. "Do not take your servant to be a worthless woman," she continued. "I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and distress." And then Eli saw the truth. He heard the honesty in her voice. He felt the weight of her words. His heart softened. He answered her with blessing. "Go in peace," he said, "and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Hannah nodded respectfully. "Let your servant find favor in your eyes," she said. And then she stood. Her tears were not gone, but something inside her had shifted. Her soul, once tangled in grief, had been loosened by prayer. She had spoken to the Lord, and though she had no promise yet, she had peace. She returned to her family. She sat with them again. This time she ate. Her face was no longer full of sorrow. She had left her pain in the temple, not because it was no longer real, but because she had placed it in the hands of the Lord. Early the next morning, as the sun rose slowly over the hills of Shiloh, Elkanah and his household rose as well. They worshipped before the Lord together. Then they packed their belongings and began their journey home, returning once again to Ramah. And in the days that followed, something quiet and beautiful happened. The Bible tells us that Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. What a gentle phrase, that island. The Lord remembered her. Not because he had ever forgotten, but because her time had come. Her quiet tears, her silent prayer, her faithful heart, they had all been seen. And the Lord, in his mercy, answered her. In the course of time, Hannah became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. She called him Samuel, for she said, "I have asked him from the Lord." The name Samuel sounds like the Hebrew phrase for heard by God. And indeed he was. The child she had waited for, prayed for, wept for, had finally come. And though her arms were now full, her heart never forgot the vow she had made in the stillness of the temple. Samuel's life would be different. He would not be raised in her home for long. But for now, she held him close. She nursed him. She rocked him gently. She whispered prayers over him in the night. She had made a promise, and soon she would fulfill it. But not just yet. For now, she was a mother, and her joy was deep and quiet. The Lord had heard her. The days passed quietly in the home of Elkanah and Hannah. The child Samuel grew steadily in her arms. He was a gentle boy with soft eyes and a calm spirit. He laughed at the morning birds and reached out to touch the warmth of the Sunday. He wrapped his tiny fingers around Hannah's hand, not knowing yet the deep story that had brought him into the world. Hannah watched him closely. She cherished every moment. She sang soft lullabies while nursing him. She told him stories of the Lord while rocking him to sleep. Each breath he took was a reminder that the Lord had heard her, that the years of silence had not been in vain, that her tears in the temple had grown into a life now nestled in her arms. And yet, her heart held a quiet weight. She had not forgotten her vow. In the temple of Shiloh, in her deepest sorrow, she had made a promise. If the Lord gave her a son, she would give him back to the Lord. She would bring him to the temple to serve all his days. But she did not rush. She waited until Samuel was old enough to eat solid food. She waited until he was no longer nursing. She waited until he could walk with confidence and recognize the world around him. Then she knew the time had come. Elkanah rose early one morning, preparing for the yearly trip to Shiloh. As always, he would go with his household to offer sacrifices and fulfill vows before the Lord. He turned to Hannah and asked gently if she would come. But Hannah shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "I will wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him myself, so that he may appear before the Lord and stay there forever." Elkanah looked into her eyes. He saw the steadiness of her purpose. He knew she had not forgotten the vow she made. And so, with love, he said, "Do what seems best to you. Stay here until he is weaned. May the Lord establish his word." And so Hannah stayed behind that year. She remained at home with Samuel, pouring into his early days all the care and love she could offer. Each time she cradled him, she prayed in her heart. Each time she fed him, she remembered her promise. Each night as she tucked him in, she whispered songs of the Lord, preparing his spirit for the life ahead. At last the day came. Samuel was ready. He was still a small child, but his steps were sure. His eyes were bright, and his spirit, though young, was open to the things of God. Hannah gathered her things for the journey. She brought with her a 3-year-old bull for sacrifice, a container of flour, and a skin of wine. These were offerings of gratitude and dedication. Then, gently and quietly, she took Samuel by the hand. They walked together to Shiloh. The road to the temple was lined with trees and open fields. The sky stretched wide and soft above them. Hannah did not speak much on the way. Her heart was full, a mixture of joy and ache, pride and surrender, gratitude and goodbye. When they reached the temple, she found Eli the priest. He was older now, perhaps slower in step, but his eyes still carried the weight of his calling. Hannah stood before him and spoke with calm reverence. "Pardon me, my lord," she said. "As surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him." She looked down at Samuel, who stood quietly beside her. "So now I give him to the Lord," she continued. "For his whole life he shall be given over to the Lord." And there, in that sacred place, she fulfilled her vow. Samuel, though still a young boy, remained at the temple with Eli. He would grow up in the presence of the Lord. He would learn to serve. He would learn to listen. And in time, he would become a prophet and a judge of Israel. But before she left, Hannah knelt and lifted her voice in a prayer of praise. This song, spoken from the depths of her soul, was one of the most beautiful prayers in all of Scripture. It was not a song of sorrow, but a song of triumph. It rose gently from her lips, full of peace and reverence. "My heart rejoices in the Lord," she began. "In the Lord my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance." She continued with a series of praises, not of herself, but of the power and justice of God. She spoke of how the Lord brings down the proud and lifts up the humble, how he feeds the hungry and gives children to the barren, how he guards the faithful and brings silence to the wicked. "There is no one holy like the Lord," she said. "There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God." It was a declaration, a celebration, a mother's quiet anthem of faith. When she finished, she stood. She looked at Samuel one last time and then turned to go. Her steps were steady. Her heart was at peace. She had kept her promise. And Samuel, the boy born of prayer and praise, remained in the house of the Lord. There he would grow. There he would serve. There he would begin the sacred work of his calling. And the Lord was with him. The days at the temple passed with a quiet rhythm. Little Samuel, though still only a child, now lived in the house of the Lord. He rose early. He watched. He listened. He followed the old priest Eli, learning each part of the daily offerings, the prayers, the lighting of the lampstands, and the placing of bread upon the sacred table. He slept in the temple courts and breathed the holy silence of that place. Though he was young, he did not cry out for home. For the Lord was near, his spirit was calm, the peace of God covered him. But far away in the hills of Ramah, Hannah had not forgotten him. Each day she thought of his smile. Each night she remembered the soft sound of his voice. And though she had given him fully to the Lord, her mother's heart still reached for him in love. Every year Hannah and Elkanah journeyed to Shiloh, just as they always had. They came to worship, to offer sacrifices, and to honor the Lord with thanksgiving. But now there was a quiet joy in Hannah's steps. For each time they traveled, she brought something with her. A little robe carefully made by her own hands. She had begun sewing the moment they returned home. She had taken the finest cloth she could find. She measured and folded. She stitched slowly and steadily by the firelight, praying over every thread. As the months passed, the robe took shape. It was small but neat, strong but soft, and when she had finished, she folded it with care and set it aside, waiting for the journey. When at last the family reached Shiloh, Hannah's heart beat faster. She found Samuel in the temple court, standing beside Eli, his small hands busy with the priestly tasks he had learned. His face was older, though not by many years, and his eyes shone with a quiet wisdom beyond his age. When Samuel saw her, his face lit up. She knelt beside him and placed the robe in his hands. He touched it gently, smiling as he held it to his chest. Though he had grown, he still fit perfectly in her arms. They did not need many words. Their love was understood. Each year she returned. And each year she brought him a new robe, made slightly longer than the last. She watched him grow taller. She watched his steps become more steady. And still, she gave thanks. The Lord had remembered her. And now, she remembered her vow, not with pain, but with praise. Eli, too, saw Hannah's faith. He watched the way she greeted her son. He heard the quiet strength in her voice. And each time she came, he spoke a blessing over her. "May the Lord give you children by this woman," he said to Elkanah, "to take the place of the one she prayed for and gave to the Lord." And the Lord, who sees all things, heard that prayer too. In time, Hannah's home was filled with the sounds of more children. She bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. The silence that had once filled her life was now replaced with laughter and song. But in her heart, Samuel remained her first joy, the one who had been born of sorrow and shaped by faith, the child she had asked for and given back to the Lord. And Samuel, living in the presence of God, continued to grow. The scriptures say that the boy Samuel grew in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. Eli grew older, and his eyesight began to fade. But Samuel's light only grew stronger. He listened carefully. He served faithfully. And though the people did not yet know what he would become, the Lord was already preparing him for something greater. The temple in Shiloh, though holy, was not without its troubles. Eli's own sons, who served as priests, were corrupt. They dishonored the offerings. They disrespected the worship. Their hearts were not humble, and their ways were wicked in the sight of God. But Samuel was different. He walked in honesty. He did not take what was not his. He listened before speaking. He loved the Lord, even when he did not understand everything he saw. His heart was pure, and his spirit open. He was a child set apart. And all the while, back in Ramah, Hannah watched her children play in the fields. She held her younger sons and sang them the same songs she had once sung to Samuel. She braided the hair of her daughters and told them stories of how the Lord hears every prayer, even the ones whispered through tears. Sometimes she would step outside in the evening, looking toward the sky. She would remember the temple, the light of the lampstands, the smell of the offerings, the voice of Eli and her son. Though they were apart, she knew the Lord held him closer than she ever could. The story of Hannah and Samuel is not only about sorrow and blessing, it is also about trust. Trust that when something is offered to the Lord, it is never lost. It is only given a new purpose. Hannah had prayed through pain. She had waited through silence, and when her prayer was answered, she gave her greatest joy back to the one who gave it. And the Lord, who is kind and faithful, honored her offering. Her name would be remembered. Her prayer would be recorded. Her story would be told through generations as a song of quiet strength. And Samuel, the child of promise, would one day become a voice for a nation. But for now, he served in the temple. He learned, he listened, and he grew. In the quietness of the temple, the lamps still burned. Their flames flickered gently, casting warm golden light across the stone walls. The air was still. Not a sound echoed through the sacred space, except for the soft breath of the child sleeping nearby. Samuel lay in his place, close to the ark of God. He had helped Eli settle for the night, and now rested quietly, waiting for the morning's work. He did not yet know that this night would be different, that something holy would stir the silence. Outside, the stars shimmered over the hills of Shiloh. Inside, the Lord watched his servant, a boy with an open heart and a quiet spirit. Then, into the stillness, a voice came. Samuel. It was soft, but clear. It echoed not in the air, but in the soul. Samuel stirred and sat up. He was only a child, and he thought the voice must belong to Eli. He ran quickly to the old priest's side. "Here I am," he said. "You called me." But Eli, still half asleep, shook his head gently. "I did not call," he said. "Go back and lie down." Samuel returned to his place, uncertain but obedient. Again the silence returned. Again the lamps flickered softly. But soon the voice came a second time. "Samuel." The boy rose quickly and hurried to Eli. "Here I am," he said again. "You called me." Eli's brow furrowed. He looked at the child with kind eyes. "My son," he said quietly, "I did not call. Lie down once more." Samuel obeyed without question, but his heart now stirred with wonder. Once more he lay down, his small frame curled under his simple coverings. His eyes gazed into the shadows, and then the voice came again. "Samuel." A third time he rose and went to Eli. By now Eli understood. He had served in the temple for many years. He had heard the stories of old, how God had spoken to his people, calling prophets, guiding kings, speaking through dreams and visions. Eli looked into Samuel's eyes and saw the truth. The Lord was calling this child. He sat up and said, "Go and lie down." And if he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" Samuel nodded and returned to his resting place. His heart beat slowly, quietly. The night seemed deeper now. Every breath he took felt full of something unseen. The glow of the lamp burned low. The ark of God stood nearby. And then, once again, the voice came. But this time, it was not just a name. The scriptures say that the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, "Samuel, Samuel." And the boy answered, just as Eli had taught him, "Speak, for your servant is listening." In that moment, something sacred happened. The Lord revealed his word to Samuel. He spoke of things to come, of justice and change, of truths that would shake the house of Eli. It was not a light message. It was heavy with meaning and burden. But Samuel listened. He did not turn away. He did not run. He listened with all his heart. When the morning light rose over Shiloh, Samuel opened the doors of the temple as he always did. But something inside him had changed. He had heard the voice of the Lord. He had received a message meant for a prophet. Still, he hesitated to speak. Eli, now fully awake, called to him. "My son," he said gently, "what did the Lord say to you? Do not hide it from me." And so Samuel told him everything. He held nothing back. Though the words were hard, he spoke them with honesty. Eli listened, and he did not grow angry. He did not speak in defense of his sons. Instead, he bowed to the will of God. "He is the Lord," Eli said. "Let him do what is good in his eyes." From that day on, Samuel's life was different. The scriptures say that the Lord was with Samuel as he grew, and he let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground. All Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, came to know that Samuel was a prophet of the Lord. But even before the people knew, the Lord had already seen. He had chosen a child who listened, a boy who served without complaint, a heart that could carry his message. And Hannah, though far away, continued to pray. She did not seek praise. She did not ask for honor. She simply rejoiced that her son was walking with the Lord. The story of that night, the night the Lord called Samuel, is told even now. It is a reminder that God does not always speak in thunder or fire. Sometimes he calls softly by name in the stillness of the night, and those who listen, even the smallest among us, can be part of something eternal. The days passed, and the seasons shifted quietly across the hills of Israel. From the green pastures of spring to the golden fields of harvest, life moved forward with the rhythm God had woven into the land. Shiloh remained the center of worship, the place where the Ark of the Covenant rested, and the presence of the Lord was honored. And in the temple, Samuel grew. The child whom God had called in the night now stood taller with each year. His hands had once been small and soft, carrying bowls and cleaning lamps. Now they held scrolls of scripture, and his voice, once uncertain, spoke with quiet strength. But Samuel did not grow proud. He remained humble. He served with the same devotion he had known as a boy. The people began to notice. There was something about this young man, the way he walked, the way he listened, the way he paused before speaking, as if waiting for a voice beyond his own. The Lord revealed himself to Samuel through his word. It was not in loud displays or signs in the sky. Instead, it was in truth, spoken and shared, flowing like a river from heaven to earth. And Samuel became known throughout all of Israel. From the northern boundary of Dan to the southern edge of Beersheba, his name was spoken with respect. They said, "Here is a prophet who does not lie. Here is a man who walks with God." Even Eli, now old and nearly blind, would listen when Samuel spoke. Though his own house had fallen into judgment, Eli recognized that the Lord's hand was now upon another. He did not fight it. He did not cling to power. Instead, he continued to guide Samuel with gentle wisdom until his days came to a quiet end. Meanwhile, the people of Israel struggled. Though Samuel walked with God, the nation had drifted far from him. The sons of Eli, who had taken their father's priestly role, had not walked in righteousness. Their hearts were full of greed and pride. They treated the sacrifices with disrespect, and they led the people into sin. The ark of God was no longer revered as it once had been. Some came to worship with sincere hearts, but many came with hardened minds, treating holy things as common. And then a time of conflict came. The Philistines, fierce enemies of Israel, gathered for war. The people of Israel, hoping to find strength, brought the Ark of the Covenant into battle. They did not pray. They did not seek the Lord. They only wanted victory. But the Lord does not follow commands like a servant. He is the Lord of hosts, and he looks upon the heart. In that battle, the Israelites were defeated. The Ark of God was captured, and the sons of Eli were killed. A messenger ran to Shiloh with torn clothes and dust on his head. He told the people what had happened. The ark was gone. The priests were dead. The army scattered. And when Eli heard that the ark had been taken, he fell from his seat and died. He had judged Israel for 40 years. Now his time was over. It was a dark and quiet moment for the people. The glory had departed, they said. The presence of the Lord had left them. And for a time it seemed that the light of Israel had grown dim. But Samuel remained. He did not flee. He did not fall into despair. Instead, he waited. He listened. And in time, the Lord called him again. This time, not in the voice of the night, but in the stirring of the heart. The people needed a leader, not a king to rule with weapons and power, but a prophet to guide them back to truth. So Samuel traveled throughout the land. From village to village he came not with armies, but with the word of the Lord. He called the people to repent, to turn from idols, to return to the God of their fathers. And slowly they began to listen. They remembered the stories their grandmothers had told, of Abraham and Sarah, of Moses and the Red Sea, of Joshua and the walls of Jericho. They remembered the God who had led them through the wilderness and given them the land. And they wept. Under Samuel's guidance, they gathered at Mizpah. They fasted. They confessed their sins. They poured out water as an offering before the Lord, a symbol of their sorrow and humility. And the Lord heard. When the Philistines approached again, ready to strike, the people did not rely on swords. They turned to Samuel and said, "Do not stop crying out to the Lord our God for us, that he may rescue us." So Samuel took a young lamb, and offered it as a whole burnt offering. As the smoke rose into the sky, Samuel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord answered. That day the Lord thundered against the Philistines with a great noise. Confused and scattered, they were defeated before Israel. The people chased them far away, and peace returned to the land. Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen. He called it Ebenezer, saying, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." And for many years, Israel enjoyed peace. Samuel continued to judge Israel all the days of his life. He traveled each year to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, settling disputes and teaching the ways of the Lord. Then he would return to his home in Ramah, where he built an altar to God. And Hannah, though her days of weeping had long passed, was never forgotten. Her prayer, whispered in a time of sorrow, had become the beginning of something beautiful. She had not known what would come. She had only trusted. And the Lord, in his kindness, had done more than she could ask or imagine. As the years passed, the land of Israel settled into a quiet season. The people tilled their soil and raised their children. They remembered the Lord in their prayers and offerings, and under Samuel's gentle leadership there was peace. Samuel was now an old man. His hair had turned white, and the lines upon his face showed the wisdom of a life lived in service. He still travelled, still judged, still taught, though his steps had slowed. The people loved him, and they came to him with their troubles, seeking fairness, truth, and guidance. But time, as it always does, continued to move forward. Samuel's sons, Joel and Abijah, were appointed as judges in Beersheba. Yet they did not walk in their father's ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. Their hearts were not like Samuel's heart, and the elders of Israel noticed. So one day a group of men came together. They journeyed to Ramah, where Samuel lived, and stood before the prophet with heavy hearts. "You are old," they said, "and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." Samuel listened, but their words troubled him. He had spent his whole life pointing Israel back to God. He had called them to live under the Lord's guidance, to trust the one who had rescued them from Egypt and guided them through the wilderness. And now they wanted a king, a man to rule over them, a crown and a throne. Samuel brought their request before the Lord, and the Lord answered, not with anger, but with understanding. "Listen to all that the people are saying to you," the Lord said. "It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. They have done this from the day I brought them out of Egypt until now. Warn them solemnly. Let them know what a king will do." So Samuel gathered the people. He stood before them, his voice calm and steady, and said, "This is what a king will do. He will take your sons and make them serve in his armies. He will assign some to plough his fields and reap his harvests. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and give them to his officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your flocks. You will become his servants. And when that day comes, you will cry out for relief. But the Lord will not answer you in that day." There was silence for a moment. The wind rustled through the olive trees. The sun rested gently over the hills. The people looked at one another, and then they raised their voices. "No," they said, "we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations. A king will lead us and go before us into battle." Samuel heard their cry. He turned once more to the Lord. And the Lord said, "Listen to them, give them a king." So Samuel said to the men of Israel, "Go back to your towns. The Lord will show us who the king will be." And the people departed. Days passed, then weeks, and far away, in the land of Benjamin, there lived a young man named Saul. He was tall and handsome, head and shoulders above any other. He came from a wealthy family, but his heart was quiet. He did not seek power. He did not dream of thrones or battles. One morning, his father's donkeys wandered off. Saul was sent with a servant to look for them. They searched across the hills and through the valleys. After many days, they had found nothing. Tired and unsure, Saul said to his servant, "Let us go back, or my father will stop worrying about the donkeys and start worrying about us." But the servant had another idea. "There is a man of God in this town," he said. "He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let us go and ask him what we should do." And so, guided not by ambition but by lost animals, Saul came to Samuel. The Lord had already spoken to Samuel the day before, saying, "Tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him ruler over my people Israel." When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord whispered again, "This is the man." Samuel welcomed Saul with kindness. He prepared a place for him at the feast and gave him the seat of honor. He spoke with him through the night. Then the next morning he took Saul aside, poured oil on his head and said, "Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance?" Saul was astonished. He had come searching for donkeys, and now he was being told he would lead a nation. Samuel gave him signs to confirm the message. And every sign came to pass. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Saul. He prophesied among the prophets. The people began to whisper, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" they asked. They were surprised, confused, curious. Later, Samuel gathered the tribes of Israel at Mizpah. One by one, the tribes came forward. Then the clans, then the families, and at last the name of Saul, son of Kish, was chosen. But Saul was not to be found. He had hidden himself among the supplies. He did not rush to the spotlight. He did not demand attention. Perhaps he was afraid. Perhaps he was humble. Either way, the people searched, and they brought him forward. And when he stood among them, he was taller than anyone else. "Here is the man the Lord has chosen," Samuel said. "There is no one like him among all the people." And the people shouted, "Long live the king!" But not everyone rejoiced. Some doubted. Some muttered. "How can this man save us?" they asked. They showed him no respect. Still, Saul said nothing. He returned home quiet and watchful. And Samuel, though his heart was heavy, remained faithful. He had listened to the Lord. He had obeyed. And he continued to serve, trusting that even in change, God was still at work. Now the people had a king. They had asked for one, and the Lord had given them Saul, son of Kish. Though Saul did not seek the crown, it had been placed gently upon his life by the hand of the prophet and the will of the Lord. At first, Saul returned home quietly. He did not boast or demand allegiance. Some men followed him, men whose hearts God had touched. Others doubted him. But Saul said nothing. He kept watch and waited. Then came a time of danger. Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, marched against the city of Jabesh-Gilead. He laid siege and threatened the people. They cried for peace, but Nahash mocked them. He said he would spare them only if he could gouge out the right eye of every man to bring shame upon all Israel. The messengers of Jabesh-Gilead went out in sorrow, begging for help. When word reached Saul, the Spirit of God came upon him with power. Though he had been humble and quiet, he now rose with the strength of a leader. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent them throughout Israel with this message: "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel into battle." And the fear of the Lord fell upon the people. Men from every tribe came forward. They marched together in unity. They attacked the Ammonites at dawn and struck them down. The city of Jabesh-Gilead was saved. And now no one doubted Saul. Then Samuel gathered the people again at Gilgal. There, before the Lord, they reaffirmed Saul's kingship. They sacrificed fellowship offerings, and Saul and the people rejoiced together. But now Samuel had something else to say. He was growing old. His eyes had seen many seasons. His voice, though still strong, carried the weight of farewell. The people gathered, listening quietly as the man who had guided them since his youth prepared to bless and release them. Samuel stood tall before the crowd. His robe moved softly in the breeze. His white hair caught the sunlight. His heart was full. He said, "I am old and grey. My sons are with you. I have been your leader from my youth until this day. Here I stand. Tell me, have I taken anyone's ox or donkey? Have I cheated or oppressed anyone? Have I accepted a bribe?" And the people answered with one voice, "You have not cheated us or oppressed us. You have done no wrong." Samuel nodded. He lifted his hand and spoke again. "The Lord is witness before you, and his anointed one is witness this day that I have done you no wrong." Again they answered, "He is witness." Then Samuel turned their hearts toward history. He reminded them of all the Lord had done, how he brought them out of Egypt, how he raised leaders like Moses and Aaron, how he saved them when they cried out under oppression. He told them, gently but truthfully, that when they saw the threat of Nahash, they had asked for a king, even though the Lord was their king, and yet the Lord had given them what they asked for. Samuel said, "If you fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice, if you do not rebel against his commands, then you and your king will follow the Lord together. But if you turn away, his hand will be against you, as it was against your ancestors." Then, to show them the truth of his words, Samuel prayed for a sign. It was harvest time. The skies were clear. The wheat stood tall in the fields. It was not the season for rain, but as Samuel lifted his voice, the Lord sent thunder and rain from the heavens. The skies darkened, the winds began to stir. Drops of rain fell, heavy and sudden. Thunder rolled across the land like a deep voice from above. The people trembled. They cried out to Samuel, "Pray to the Lord for us. We do not want to die. We have added to all our sins the evil of asking for a king." Samuel calmed them. His voice was steady and full of peace. He said, "Do not be afraid. You have done all this evil, yet do not turn away from the Lord. Serve him with all your heart. Do not chase after empty things that cannot help or save you. The Lord will not reject his people for the sake of his great name. He was pleased to make you his own." Then he said the words that stayed in the hearts of many. "As for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by failing to pray for you. I will teach you the good and right way. Only fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. Consider what great things he has done for you. But if you persist in doing evil, you and your king will perish." The storm passed. The skies cleared again. The wheat fields stood in silence, heavy with rain. The people returned to their homes, thoughtful and quiet. Samuel, too, returned to Ramah. He continued to pray for the people. He still judged Israel. But his time as leader had drawn to a close. He had given them everything: his youth, his strength, his wisdom. And now he watched over them like a father watches over grown children. He trusted the Lord to guide what would come next. The story of Hannah, once whispered in the dark halls of the temple, had grown into something vast and beautiful. Her prayer for a child had been the beginning of a prophet's journey. And now that child, grown old and full of grace, had led a nation to a new chapter. Time moved gently forward, as it always does. The fields blossomed again. Children grew. Young men married. Old men watched the sky with quiet thoughts. Saul was now the king of Israel. He had led the people into battle. He had defended their land. The people admired him. He was tall and strong, and he looked like a king. Yet something deeper was missing, though few noticed at first. There came a day when Saul faced the Philistines once more. The enemy gathered at Michmash with thousands of chariots, horsemen, and soldiers. The people of Israel were afraid. They hid in caves, in thickets, behind rocks, and in wells. Some crossed the Jordan River to escape. Saul remained at Gilgal, just as Samuel had instructed. He was to wait 7 days, until the prophet arrived to offer sacrifices to the Lord. But as the 7th day passed, and Samuel did not come, Saul's heart grew anxious. The people were scattering. Fear crept into their voices. Saul felt the weight of the moment pressing in on him. So Saul took the burnt offering and offered it himself. Just as he finished, Samuel arrived. The old prophet's eyes were calm, but his face carried deep sorrow. He asked, "What have you done?" Saul answered quickly. He said the people were leaving and that Samuel had not arrived on time. He saw the Philistines preparing for battle, and he feared they would attack before he had sought the Lord's favor. So he took matters into his own hands. Samuel shook his head slowly. "You have done a foolish thing," he said. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not obeyed his command." Those words sank into the earth like seeds of sorrow. Samuel left Saul and returned to Gibeah. The 2 men had once walked in unity, prophet and king. But something had changed. A thread had been broken. The days passed. Saul continued to rule, but the quiet approval of the Lord had slipped from him. His heart began to harden. His decisions became less gentle. Fear still clung to him like a shadow. The Lord sent Samuel with a new instruction. It was a command rooted in ancient pain. Long ago, when Israel had left Egypt and wandered in the wilderness, the Amalekites had attacked them without mercy. Now, the Lord told Saul to go and strike the Amalekites, to leave nothing behind. It was a call for justice, a cleansing of the violence they had done. So Saul gathered the army and went to battle. He defeated the Amalekites, but he did not fully obey. He spared their king, Agag. He kept the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs. He claimed they would be offered as sacrifices, but in truth, his heart had not submitted. When Samuel heard of this, he grieved all night. He walked alone towards Saul. The wind was quiet. His steps were slow. He came upon Saul as the king was setting up a monument to himself in Carmel. When Saul saw Samuel, he smiled and said, "The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." But Samuel replied, "What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear?" Saul tried to explain. He said the soldiers had spared the best animals to sacrifice to the Lord. He said the rest had been destroyed, just as commanded. But Samuel's voice was firm. He said, "Stop. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night." And Saul listened. Samuel reminded him, "Although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king. He sent you on a mission to destroy the Amalekites. Why did you not obey?" Saul protested again. He insisted he had obeyed, that he had only spared the king and the animals for a good purpose. But Samuel spoke words that echoed through all time. He said, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying his voice? To obey is better than sacrifice. To heed is better than the fat of rams. Rebellion is like the sin of witchcraft. Arrogance is like idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." At last, Saul confessed. He said, "I have sinned. I was afraid of the people, and I gave in to them. Please forgive my sin and come back with me." But Samuel would not. He turned to leave, and Saul reached out and tore the edge of his robe. Samuel looked back and said, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and given it to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change." Even so, Samuel did as the Lord commanded. He went and executed justice upon Agag, finishing what Saul had refused to complete. After that day, Samuel did not see Saul again. He mourned for him deeply. He had loved him once. He had guided him with patience. But the road they had walked together had come to an end. The prophet returned to Ramah. He went back to the quiet hills, to the place where he had first heard the voice of God. And though he grieved, he trusted the Lord's wisdom. He knew the story was not over. The Lord was preparing someone new, a shepherd, a singer, a boy with a heart full of wonder and praise. But for now, the hills of Ramah were still, and in the gentle rhythm of that stillness, Samuel rested and waited. The morning in Ramah was cool and clear. A soft breeze moved through the olive trees and touched the face of the prophet, now aged and wise. Samuel had carried the weight of Israel's hopes for many years, and though sorrow still lingered in his heart over Saul, the Lord spoke again. "Fill your horn with oil," the Lord said gently. "Be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Samuel listened quietly. His heart stirred with both wonder and hesitation. He remembered Saul's anger and pride, and how things had changed so quickly. He asked the Lord, "How can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will try to kill me." The Lord replied with kindness, "Take a young heifer with you, and say you have come to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint the one I point out to you." So Samuel did as he was told. He made the journey to Bethlehem, a peaceful town nestled among the hills. When he arrived, the elders of the town met him with trembling. They wondered if he came in peace. Samuel nodded with a warm smile and said, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me." He invited Jesse and his sons to the sacrifice, just as the Lord had said. One by one, the sons of Jesse stood before Samuel. The first was Eliab, tall and strong. Samuel looked at him and thought, "Surely this is the one the Lord has chosen." But the Lord whispered to Samuel's heart, "Do not consider his appearance or his height. I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Jesse called Abinadab, and he too passed before Samuel. But the Lord did not choose him. Then came Shammah, but again the Lord said no. One after another, 7 sons passed by. Samuel watched each face, each frame. He listened closely for the voice of the Lord, but the answer remained the same. The chosen one was not among them. Samuel turned to Jesse with quiet curiosity. "Are these all the sons you have?" he asked. Jesse answered, "There is still the youngest. He is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So a servant was sent into the hills to fetch the boy. The sheep grazed peacefully along the hillside. The youngest son, David, moved gently among them. His heart was tender, and his hands were skilled with harp and sling. He had learned the rhythms of the earth, the stars, and the still voice of God. When the servant found him, he told David to come at once. David washed his face and hurried toward the town. When he entered, Samuel looked up. The boy was glowing with health. His eyes were bright and full of life. His cheeks were ruddy, and there was something quiet and beautiful about him. The Lord spoke again, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and poured it upon David's head in the presence of his brothers. The oil ran gently down, and in that moment the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. It filled him, comforted him, and rested on him from that day forward. No trumpet sounded, no crown was placed, no soldiers bowed, but heaven saw, and the heart of God was pleased. Samuel rose with peace in his soul. He had obeyed. The future would unfold as the Lord willed it. David returned to the hills and to his sheep, but something had changed. The Lord's presence was near him now, like the morning dew upon the grass. The Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and in its place came a troubling spirit, a restlessness that would not leave him. His servants noticed. They said, "Let us find someone who can play the harp." When the Spirit troubles you, the music will comfort you. One of the servants remembered the boy from Bethlehem. "I have seen a son of Jesse who knows how to play the harp. He is brave and wise in speech, and the Lord is with him." So Saul sent messengers to Jesse, asking that David come and serve him. Jesse prepared a donkey loaded with bread, wine, and a young goat, and sent his son to the palace. David stood before Saul and served him with humility. Whenever the troubling spirit came upon Saul, David would take his harp and play. The music rose like a gentle wind, soft and pure, and Saul would feel better. The unease would lift, peace would return. Though David was still young, he moved between two worlds. In one, he tended sheep and sang to the sky. In the other, he stood before a king who had lost his way. But through it all, he kept close to the Lord. His songs were not only melodies but prayers. His hands were not only gentle but brave. And though he wore no crown, heaven had already called him king. Back in Ramah, Samuel watched with quiet hope. He had seen the Lord's hand at work before. He had seen it in the cries of Hannah, in the birth of her son, and in the boy who had heard God's voice in the night. And now he saw it again in the quiet shepherd boy from Bethlehem. The story was not finished. It was only beginning. The days passed, and David continued to serve in King Saul's court. When Saul felt troubled or anxious, David's harp would soothe him. The sound of the strings brought peace to his restless heart. But David also returned home often to care for his father's sheep. He lived a quiet life between palace and pasture, faithfully moving wherever he was needed. One day, a messenger arrived in Bethlehem with news that stirred every heart. The Philistines had gathered for war. Their armies had taken position on one hill, while Israel's army stood on another. A wide valley lay between them. From the Philistine side, a warrior came forward each day. He was a giant of a man named Goliath. His armor was heavy, his voice loud, and his words filled with pride. "Choose a man," Goliath shouted. "Let him come down to me. If he defeats me, we will become your servants. But if I defeat him, you will serve us." His challenge echoed across the valley every morning and every evening for 40 days. No one answered. The men of Israel were afraid. Even Saul, the tall and powerful king, stayed silent. Goliath's presence brought fear that settled like a shadow over the land. David's 3 oldest brothers had gone with Saul to fight in the battle. One morning Jesse called his youngest son from the fields. "Take these roasted grains and these loaves of bread to your brothers," Jesse said, "and take this cheese to their commander. See how your brothers are doing and bring back word from them." David rose early the next day. He left his sheep in the care of another and set out toward the battlefield. As he reached the camp, he heard the shout of the battle lines being drawn. He left the supplies with the keeper of the supplies and ran to the front. There he greeted his brothers, just as Goliath stepped forward again. The giant roared his challenge, and once more the men of Israel trembled. David looked around and asked, "Who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The soldiers told him what they had heard. "The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give his daughter in marriage and exempt his family from taxes." But David's oldest brother, Eliab, was angry. "Why have you come here?" he asked. "And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and your heart. You just came to watch the battle." David replied gently, "Can I not even speak?" Then he turned away and asked others about the challenge. The news reached Saul, and David was brought before the king. "I will fight him," David said simply. Saul looked at the young man and said, "You cannot go against this Philistine. You are only a boy, and he has been a warrior since his youth." David answered with quiet courage, "I have tended my father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and took a lamb, I went after it. I struck it and rescued the lamb. The Lord who rescued me from the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." Saul listened. There was something steady in David's voice, something that reminded him of hope. "Go," he said, "and the Lord be with you." Saul tried to dress David in his own armor, but it was too heavy. David removed it and instead chose what he knew best. He picked up his staff and 5 smooth stones from the stream. He placed them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag and carried his sling in hand. Then he walked alone toward the valley. Goliath saw him coming and laughed. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" he bellowed. "Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds." David stood firm. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin," he said, "but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands. The whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." The two moved toward each other, Goliath with his heavy armor and shield-bearer, and David with only his sling and his faith. As the giant approached, David ran forward quickly. He reached into his bag, took a stone, and slung it with all his strength. The stone flew through the air and struck Goliath on the forehead. The mighty warrior fell, face down on the ground. Silence filled the valley. The Philistines turned and fled. The men of Israel gave a great shout and chased them from the battlefield. David became a hero that day, not because he was strong in body, but because he trusted fully in the Lord. Saul watched with wonder. "Whose son is this young man?" he asked. No one knew for sure. So David was brought before the king once again, still holding the head of the defeated giant. "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem," David said. From that day on, David remained with Saul, and the people of Israel began to sing his name. But David did not change. His heart remained the same. Whether playing music in the palace or standing before a giant, he walked closely with the Lord, just as Hannah had once prayed for her own son to do. And in the gentle hills of Bethlehem, the sheep waited for their shepherd, who now carried not just a harp, but the quiet strength of God's anointed. David had become known throughout the land. The people of Israel spoke his name with joy and pride. When he returned from battle, they would gather to greet him with singing and dancing. The women played tambourines and lyres, and their voices filled the streets with songs of victory. "Saul has slain his thousands, they sang, and David his tens of thousands. These words pierced the heart of King Saul. He listened, and his face grew troubled. The praises given to David were louder than those given to him. Saul, once so strong and sure, now felt the whisper of fear growing inside his heart. That fear soon turned into jealousy, and jealousy turned into bitterness. He began to watch David with suspicion. From that day forward, Saul's spirit was not at rest. Though David remained faithful and kind, the king's heart could no longer rejoice. When David played the harp, the sweet sounds no longer soothed Saul. Instead, they stirred his anger. On one such day, Saul picked up a spear and hurled it at David, but David moved quickly and escaped unharmed. Still, David did not speak harshly. He did not return evil for evil. He continued to serve the king with humility. And because the Lord was with him, everything he did was blessed. This made Saul even more uneasy. So he gave David command over 1,000 men and sent him into battle again and again. But David led with courage and honor, and he became even more beloved by the people. In time, Saul offered his daughter Michal to David as a wife, hoping that perhaps the weight of royal life or the danger of more battles would cause David to fall. But again, David succeeded. He fulfilled the tasks Saul gave him, and he married Michal. Michal loved David deeply, and David remained gentle with her, yet Saul's hatred only grew stronger. He began to plot secretly, hoping to destroy David. He ordered his servants to watch him, to report his every move. But one of those servants was Jonathan, Saul's own son. Jonathan and David had become very close. Their friendship was unlike any other. It was built on respect, trust, and a deep love for what was right. Jonathan admired David's heart and saw clearly that God's hand was upon him. So when Saul confided in Jonathan and asked him to help in his plan to kill David, Jonathan was grieved. He went at once to his friend and warned him. "My father seeks to harm you," Jonathan said. "Stay in hiding for now. I will speak with him in the field and try to change his heart." The next morning, Jonathan spoke kindly about David to his father. "Let not the king do wrong to his servant David," he said. "He has not wronged you. What he has done has helped you greatly. He risked his life to defeat Goliath, and the Lord brought about a great victory for all of Israel. You were glad then. Why now would you sin by shedding innocent blood?" Saul listened. His anger cooled for a moment. "As surely as the Lord lives," he said, "David will not be put to death." Jonathan rejoiced and brought David back into the king's presence. For a short while, peace returned to the palace. David played the harp again, and the songs floated through the rooms like a gentle breeze. But the peace did not last. The Philistines rose up again, and David led the army into battle. Once more, victory followed him. Once more, the people praised his name, and once more, Saul's jealousy was stirred. An evil spirit tormented the king. He sat in his palace, with his spear in hand, watching David play the harp. Suddenly, without warning, Saul hurled the spear again. David escaped once more and fled into the night. From that day forward, he did not return to Saul's court. Saul sent messengers to David's house to keep watch and to kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, loved him too dearly to let harm come to him. She helped him climb down through a window and escape. Then she took a statue, placed it in David's bed, and covered it with a blanket. When the messengers arrived, she said David was ill. But when Saul discovered the truth, he was furious with Michal. "Why did you deceive me?" he asked. She answered, "He said to me, 'Let me go. If not, I will kill you.'" David had now become a man on the run. He fled to Samuel, the old prophet, and together they stayed in a quiet place called Naioth. There, David found rest for a little while. He poured out his heart to Samuel, telling him all that had happened. Samuel listened with patience. He prayed with David and reminded him that God was still with him. But even in that peaceful place, Saul's anger chased after David. He sent messengers to capture him, but something strange happened. As each group of messengers approached the place where Samuel and David stayed, the Spirit of God came upon them. Instead of taking David, they began to prophesy. It happened again with a second group, and then a third. Finally, Saul went himself. But when he reached the place, the Spirit of God came upon him too. He removed his royal robes and began to speak words he did not plan, overwhelmed by the presence of the Lord. For an entire day and night he remained there, speaking under the Spirit's power. And all the people asked, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" David saw this with wonder. Even though Saul's heart had turned dark with jealousy, God still ruled over every moment. David's trust in the Lord remained firm. He had escaped danger once again, not by force or by his own cleverness, but by the strange and sovereign hand of the one who had called him. In the quiet of the night, David rested under the stars, far from the palace and the throne, but close to the heart of God. After fleeing from King Saul's palace, David became a man on the move. The land stretched wide and wild around him, rocky hills, quiet forests, and lonely caves where he could rest his head. Though danger followed close behind, David found a strange kind of peace. His heart was fixed on the Lord, and he trusted that God's hand would protect him. David traveled far from the comforts of home. He wandered through the hills of Judah and beyond. Sometimes he hid in caves deep within the mountains, safe from those who sought his life. In those quiet places, he lifted his voice in song and prayer, finding strength in the stillness. Despite his uncertain path, David never lost faith. He knew the Lord was with him. He believed that God had chosen him for a purpose greater than any throne or crown. So he waited patiently, trusting in God's timing and care. Along the way, David gathered friends, men who had reason to run too. Some were burdened and broken, seeking refuge from their own troubles. These companions became his loyal band. Together, they traveled through the wilderness, sharing stories, food, and hope. Though life was difficult, David treated everyone with kindness and respect. He was a leader who cared for his people, even when their numbers were small and their future uncertain. Saul, meanwhile, continued to search for David. The king's anger and jealousy had not lessened. He sent soldiers to capture David, but each time David escaped. The Lord protected him in mysterious ways. Sometimes David slipped away under the cover of night. Other times, the Lord's guidance led him to safety. One day, David and his men came to the wilderness of En-Gedi. It was a quiet, beautiful place with springs of water and lush plants growing among the rocks. David went into a cave to rest. As he settled in, Saul and his soldiers arrived nearby, hunting for him. Saul entered the same cave, unaware that David was hiding deeper inside. David's heart beat fast. Here was the king, his enemy, just a few feet away. David's men urged him to take the moment. "Now is your chance," they whispered. "You can kill Saul and be free." But David shook his head. He stepped quietly to the edge of the cave and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Later, David called out to Saul from a distance. "Why do you listen when people say I want to harm you?" David asked softly. "Look, I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not harm you. The Lord will judge between us. The Lord will deliver you into my hands, but I will not harm the Lord's anointed." Saul's heart softened. He called back, "You are more righteous than I am. You have treated me well while I have treated you badly." Saul wept and spoke kindly. "Go in peace. I will not harm you again." David bowed his head and promised to continue to serve the Lord faithfully. This moment was a quiet turning point. Even though danger still waited outside the cave, David's heart remained gentle. He chose mercy over revenge, trust over fear. As the days passed, David continued to live in the wilderness. He prayed often, writing words that would later become songs of praise and hope. His faith grew stronger, like a deep root holding firm in rocky soil. Though far from the throne, David walked closely with God. He found comfort in knowing that God was in control, even when the future seemed unclear. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, David sang softly to his friends. His voice carried through the trees, peaceful and full of trust. "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me," he sang. "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Those words brought quiet peace to all who heard. And so, David's journey continued full of challenges, but also full of hope. He was a man chosen by God, walking humbly, trusting fully, and waiting patiently for the day when his path would be clear. The years passed slowly for David in the wilderness. Seasons came and went, bringing soft rains and dry winds. The hills of Judah whispered with the sound of grass and the songs of birds. Though far from the throne and the busy cities, David's heart remained fixed on the Lord. His band of followers grew in number and spirit. They were a mix of broken souls, wanderers, and faithful hearts who trusted David's leadership and the God he loved. Together they traveled across rocky paths and peaceful valleys, learning to rely on God's guidance. David's faith deepened with each day. He wrote songs of praise, prayers of trust, and words of hope. These songs, carried on the gentle winds, spoke of a God who watches over the humble, who delivers the weak, and who prepares a future filled with peace. Meanwhile, Saul's power waned. His jealousy and fear made him restless and harsh. His people began to question his rule, longing for a king who would lead with wisdom and kindness. One day, the Lord spoke clearly to Samuel. "Do not mourn for Saul. The kingdom is not his to keep. I have chosen a new king for Israel." Samuel listened and obeyed. he sent word to Jesse, calling him to send David to Ramah. David obeyed the call. As he arrived, he found Samuel ready to anoint the next king. The young shepherd stood humbly before the prophet. Samuel took the horn of oil and poured it over David's head once again, a quiet but powerful sign that God's favor rested upon him. Though David's path had been long and difficult, this anointing marked the beginning of a new chapter. David was now the chosen king, though he had not yet taken the throne. For a time, David continued to live in the wilderness, leading his people and trusting the Lord's perfect timing. He faced many challenges, yet he held fast to the promises of God. David's story is one of patience, faith, and courage. It reminds us that even when the way seems uncertain, God's plan is always good. So as you drift into sleep tonight, imagine the gentle hills of Judah, the soft whispers of the wind, and the quiet songs of a shepherd boy who trusted the Lord with all his heart. And remember, the same God who guided David watches over you too. Now, as your eyes grow heavy and your breath slows, imagine the soft glow of a quiet evening in the hills of ancient Israel. The sun is setting gently behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. The cool air wraps around you like a gentle blanket. The world is calm and still. Think of Hannah, a woman who prayed with all her heart and trusted the Lord even when her heart was heavy. She waited patiently, believing that God's timing was perfect. Her faith brought a son who would grow to be a great leader. And think of Peninnah, whose story reminds us that even in difficult times, kindness and understanding can bring peace. Think of Samuel, the faithful prophet, who listened to God's voice and led with wisdom. He anointed kings not because of their strength or looks, but because of their hearts. And think of David, the young shepherd boy, who trusted God when the world was uncertain. He chose mercy over anger, faith over fear, and in time he rose to lead a nation with a humble and brave heart. All these stories show us something beautiful. They tell us that even when life feels hard, even when the path is not clear, God is with us. He listens to our prayers, He cares for our hearts, and He leads us gently toward peace and joy. So as you lie here now, let the quiet of the night fill you. Let your thoughts soften like a calm river. Imagine yourself resting in a place of safety, wrapped in God's love. Feel the promise that no matter where you are, no matter what tomorrow may bring, you are held by a gentle hand that will never let go. The same God who watched over Hannah, who guided Samuel, and who protected David, watches over you too. May your dreams be peaceful and your heart be full of hope. Rest now, dear friend, in the kindness of the Lord. Good night, and God bless you.